Where do you?
Madison, Wisconsin.
You want to stay for his presentation?
You flew all the way here?
It's the closest
Bro, yeah.
HBCU. The closest
What?
HBCU to Madison.
Yeah.
He's recruiting. Sit down and listen. Yeah.
I guess I'm fourth.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of students?
A lot of them show up here. I stream it online,
Okay.
so they cheat.
You know how long it will be? I have to be with the student at 2.
Okay.
I don't want to walk out on you.
At 3, you mean?
At 3, you mean?
Oh my goodness. No,
Because it's 2:32.
I'm late. It's okay. It's on team. You know I advise
Yeah, I know, but
classes. So.
You having the
Yeah, I forgot all about it. 'Cause my other
daylight
class-
savings?
I was about to say, is it
It's
daylight
lost,
savings?
no, one of my students was late and they didn't want to get a 0, so I told them with their laptop and all week. And I forgot all about my meeting.
And your class ran the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Your class ended up running the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
See? Yeah, this is social work and police. This is marrying your criminal justice.
Somebody did a presentation on social work and criminal justice. It was a great time.
I think it's running. You want me to get you in it too, or just?
I can try. It's all right.
Okay.
Either way.
If
I'll
I
try to
can-
move over. Strip on that.
Is that enough? It does. It's like right there. So yeah, ready whenever you.
Sure. You didn't do an introduction or anything for?
I'm sorry. I should. So Officer Pratt comes for, is it the recruitment week?
Yeah, there's a recruitment fair going on right now at the over at the student union. So
And somehow out of social and behavioral sciences, I'm the only professor who has replied to his emails in the past 3 years to have him come to our class as a guest speaker. Yes, we need more activity from our
Yes, we
professors,
do.
like come talk in my class.
I'll get your card for mine.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Do you have a later class today too?
Yes, at 5:45.
I know.
We're probably gonna
Drive home.
drive home.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, in some cases we stay 2 nights. So next time,
yes.
maybe for sure.
And then you
But,
want to come summer or fall?
we usually come fall and then in the spring. So there's
Spring?
for each of the one in October and then one in March here. So,
Okay. That's okay.
cool.
I hope that's enough of an introduction.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. All right. So I'm a police officer for the city of Madison, Wisconsin. It's about an hour west of Milwaukee, 2 hours northwest of Chicago. It's the capital of Wisconsin. We have about a 460 person police department. It's about a 300,000 person city. It's growing. It's a nice place to live. So me, myself, I'm a mental health officer for the police department. So I'll kind of explain more later in the slides of what that is and hopefully answer your question. I originally grew up in Ithaca, New York. So right in the middle of the state, New York. I went to college in Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh. I studied emergency medicine because I wanted to be a paramedic. I ended up working for the city of Pittsburgh as a paramedic. I decided to go to nursing school. I was interested in psychiatric nursing actually. And then we did a clinical in the psychiatric department of the local psychiatric hospital. They were just handing out meds. It looked really boring. There wasn't really, the one part I really liked about paramedicine is that you were out in the streets, you were, out in the community, being really involved, going on kind of the call aspect of it. And so I kind of realized that, the police were the first responders for mental health in the community. And so I decided to become a police officer. I also have, a master's in public policy from the University of Wisconsin. So after I moved to Madison to become a police officer, I kind of got that. That's a picture of me and my dad in front of my work here. So objectives today. So we're going to try to identify some points of intersection between police and social work and explore some barriers to effective collaboration and also some strategies to improve it. In my current position, I work a lot with social workers, sometimes the relationship's better than others, and kind of talk to talk to kind of the reasons of how we can kind of work through that.
I just got your email. That's fun.
Bad service, I guess. So first of all, there's a lot of really intersection between police and social work. If you think about it. So mental health commitments is the first one. I mean, that's a big part of my job. Suicide attempts, acute, all that mental illness stuff. So, for example, in Wisconsin, works different in different states, but in order for a mental health commitment to happen, the crisis center of the county, which is usually staffed by social workers, mental health social workers, have to agree that there's enough dangerousness and there's a mental health component, and the police officers have to agree. So it's you have to collaborate basically for mental health commitments to go. And then of course there's tons of social work jobs and therapy all over the place. But even if you get out of the mental health realm, which is obvious where the shared caseload is, there's a lot also in other more kind of stereotypical police kind of roles. So like the family violence, domestic violence, child abuse. I mean, like there's CPS and APS agencies are usually staffed by social workers, and have a very kind of similar law enforcement sort of job. They investigate kind of the welfare of somebody, and sometimes have to take kind of action. And police obviously have a kind of often a big role in those investigations. Then there's AODA, so alcohol and drug abuse. Obviously, police are usually the first responders to those incidences, and and social workers are often trying to clean up the mess of those too. And then obviously any vulnerable population in crisis, they're often going to have a lot of police interaction as well as interaction with the social work field. So also we have very similar professional challenges. So when you guys go out into the field, you kind of learn how difficult it is to respond to mental health emergencies and kind of take that. You'll probably, it's a good chance you'll have like a lot of shift work in off hours. You'll be on call 24/7. It's very similar to police work in that way. I talked about APS and CPS, and so if you become a social work kind of in that realm and kind of child welfare, you have to kind of exert these power and control things over people. Like sometimes you have to take a kid away from a family where they're not being cared for, or an adult out of a home that when they can no longer care for themselves. So you kind of still have that. You have a lot of responsibility to kind of take people's rights away sometimes. And so there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of responsibility and ownership, and you're always very subject to scrutiny and second guessing. I mean, always when there's a child death because of abuse, there always is like, what did CPS do? Was this reported to CPS? It was reported to CPS. Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they take away the kid? There's always a lot of that, and obviously in policing that happens a lot. And there's a lot of liability concerns. We get a lot of mental health type calls for people who make a suicidal statement, and it's very difficult often because they often make this to their therapist or something like that, and then the therapist is stuck what to do. Maybe they don't want to send the police to their house because it's traumatic, but they also can't ignore something like that. So you have to really, and there's a bunch of different factors of how you can kind of get around that. Maybe as you learn throughout your education and careers. But I mean, it's always this liability consciousness in the back of your head for both the jobs. So exploring some differences, right? So police and social work kind of have a very different, often cultural kind of upbringing to it. So police are very command structure. It's almost always paramilitary organization. You have very select, who bosses around who, basically. If my sergeant tells me something to do, I have to do it. My captain tells me something to do, I got to do it. Versus in social work, it's a lot more collaborative. It's not so, not so much of a hierarchy hierarchy there. Police are much more short-term focused. You know, we respond to ideally emergencies and we solve the crime, you know, make an arrest, fix the problem in the short term. So like mostly because, you know, of the shift work, you know, when I was in patrol, my main concern was, you know, fixing the problem for the next 8 hours, because then I'll go home and I wouldn't have to worry about it until I came back the next day. So you often don't have as much of a long-term picture. You know, very call-driven. You know, getting done with that call and fixing the problem so that no one else has to deal with it is kind of usually the goal, but in a very efficient way versus not so much the others. Also, you know, we'll often be put to go into situations where, you know, we don't have a lot of background information. So for example, you know, as a social worker, you probably have clients that you work with months, maybe years, maybe even weeks, but then, you know, they'll have one crisis, and then as police, you have to go in there in that one crisis and somehow gather the information that you've been learning for months and then make a, you know, pretty critical decision. And so, you know, often you also, in social work, I find you're much more specialized. So, you know, obviously the education for a social worker in child welfare and domestic abuse versus a clinical social worker in mental health, you know, takes different educational tracks and, you know, different certifications versus, you know, police are kind of have to have some expertise in all of that. So that differences. So also, you know, kind of discuss this, but we have different goals, right? You know, I think police have a much more their mission is much more like overall public serving, and that sounds kind of mean, and I don't mean it like that, but like their goal is to like ensure order for the entire public and keep everyone safe. And I find social work, because of the client-focused clinical nature of it, you know, your goal is to improve that one person's life, which in the long term, improving everyone's life improves the public. But like in individual situations, you know, one of the things that we kind of rub against, especially with in the mental health field, is, you know, there'll be people who are in a mental health crisis, and they maybe there's some dangerous behavior going on, but it's just like really, you know, it's really, I guess, not enough dangerousness maybe for emergency detention because of from the you know, the mental health the social worker's perspective, but it's often, you know, very traumatic for the public, or something like, you know, somebody walking down the street yelling obscenities all the time, and, you know, like a main business area, and it's like very, like, that's by itself, you know, not a dangerous thing, but it's also very traumatic for everyone and something that we will continue to get called on. So we're like worried about the publics, but, you know, that's often our crisis center is not as worried about that, because they're more focused on, you know. So some barriers, you know, acute. So police, I think, are more acute. Social work is often a more chronic focused thing. Police often, you know, immediate safety, you know, making sure that person doesn't, you know, commit, you know, suicide for that night, versus, you know, more long-term treatment needs are more of a social work thing. You know, securing the situation for police, you know, least restrictive outcomes is always, you know, the main goal. You know, it's statute, it's in the laws of Wisconsin in terms of these mental health commitments. You always want to do the least restrictive one. So, you know, you can't do emergency detention if the person's going to voluntarily do it. So, so it's always kind of thing there. And police often focus on behavior and ensuring safety as a kind of not necessarily the treatability of things. So mental health versus criminal justice. So this is often a thing kind of like where tasked with a lot is, you know, there's kind of, somebody will commit an act that, you know, is like, you know, I don't know, punch somebody in the face. And you often have to decide how, you know, if it's mental health or if it's you know, a behavioral issue that's causing this, you know, causing their actions. So it's you know, kind of background is kind of tough. You know, sometimes people will have like a mental illness, but you know, will behaviorally decide to hit somebody, and it will be like, you know, a conscious decision for them, versus you know versus they've, you know, we're really not acting in a conscious manner, and you know, they cause danger to somebody else. So it's kind of a very tough decision. We've all kind of heard about, you know, how, you know, our jails are, you know, housed, you know, are the biggest houses of our mentally ill. So and I think unfortunately it's probably going to continue for a while, just because of, you know, the accessibility of jails, and you know, the admissions processes for them, how in a lot of ways how much easier you know, arresting is than mental health commitments is often a path. It's very unfortunate. So it's kind of answering this one, but so often, you know, somebody, you know, as I said, you know, somebody will have a history of mental health, and then will do something kind of behavioral that, you know, constitutes a crime, and it always, you know, is tough, because, you know, say, you know, somebody's son, you know, punches their father, and you know, they've had a history of mental health, but you know, they've been on their medications, they've been doing well, and they just were angry at their dad because they insulted him today, and that's what they did. And you know, it's kind of tough, because often the expectation of the family will be that, you know, that person's going to be mental, you know, treated for the mental illness, but sometimes the mental illness is not the cause of it, and then, you know, but then they need to be held like behaviorally responsible for their actions, and you know, receive some punishment. Hopefully that will stop the behavior. But so we're kind of all trying to work for them to have a happier and healthier life, but sometimes you need kind of like a little bit of both, you know, some sweet and some sour. So, and another thing, we all deal with all these system issues. So obviously, you know, public-private health systems, you know, we've talked about, I mean, I'm sure you guys learned a lot about how difficult it is to manage, you know, the insurance aspect of things when it comes to social work treatment. And, you know, police have to kind of, obviously the uninsured county-funded people, I mean, often, one story that we often get, which is very frustrating for us, is we have to take for our mental health commitments, if somebody doesn't have insurance, often the local hospitals won't take them, even if they're voluntarily are willing to go. So then we have to commit them to the state hospital, and that means we have to take them in a police car and everything, even though they voluntarily went and sought treatment. But because of the insurance landscape, you know, we're stuck doing that too, as you all. And then we all, you know, a lot of these things, you know, lack of service facilities for alcohol and drug use, you know, lack of placement options for mentally ill people. Components of safety plans are unavailable. So often, you know, somebody doesn't have enough resources, you know, family in the area, doesn't have friends, you know, doesn't have housing to go to, you know, that makes it really difficult to safety plan people. You know, transport times, I'll kind of touch on that later with us. But often, you know, mental health hospitals are really far away from where the crisis is happening. You know, medical clearance requirements, we have a big issue often with, you know, our state mental health hospital really delaying the medical clearance process and making the hospital do a bunch of things. So it'll take, you know, hours and hours and hours to wait until we can actually get the person to the place where they're going to be treated. And then, you know, protected health information, the ability to share information and such. So kind of to go off the protected health information, one issue we kind of have is the sharing of information. So often, you know, HIPAA is the protected health information that you guys as social workers will fall under that. Police don't really fall under that because they're not healthcare providers. But it's important to realize that you can kind of, if if you believe it's it's federally and federal regulations, that you can disclose treatment information to police if it's going to help the safety of that person or the public. So just kind of remember that. I mean, a lot of the newer, especially newer social workers will be very hesitant to give out information, rightly so. But if it's gonna improve the health and safety of that person or the public, you're not disobeying HIPAA. So some recommendations for improved collaboration. So you want to recognize and respect professional differences. One thing that I always kind of feel kind of as a police officer, as I said, I have this pretty good background as a paramedic, as a nurse, and if I was a nurse walking into some of these meetings and rooms, I think I would be treated with way more respect. But because I'm a police officer, I'm seen as kind of like a lower level of care. So it's important to kind of maintain that communication. Often, we'll be sitting for hours, at a hospital, interacting with this person who's going through this crisis and being kind of pretty much their main caregiver during this. But we won't be communicated with how the process is going on, so we can't answer their questions. We can't, and so we kind of feel hard done by, feel not heard, kind of in that. So it's important as you go out into the field, kind of try to see police as collaborators in your work, not just as babysitters or a taxi service or some goons that just show up when you call. But and especially in Madison, we really try to hire people with degrees. We have a lot of former social workers, so it's often you don't really necessarily know the officer's background, but you have very diverse backgrounds and often are very knowledgeable in whatever aspect it is. And so and some good ways to kind of cultivate this working relationship is to go on ride-alongs, be a familiar face to whatever local jurisdiction you end up working with. They're very, ride-alongs are always welcome. I think any department would be very, very open to that for the most part. You can often offer trainings. We're always looking in our department for, almost all police departments have some sort of in-service training where you have to complete to continue your education. We're always looking for experts for that to come in and give presentations. So managing emergencies. So remember, it's kind of all stuff we discussed, but share the need for, need to know information. Don't be scared to do that. Keep others informed, as kind of discussed, and those commitments. Continue that communication. Try to over communicate. It's what always we kind of discuss with each other, and address barriers as they go. So you can always. So one thing we discussed is the chain of command in policing. So often, you can. In social work agencies, you can just reach out to one social worker and they can often, kind of circumnavigate things easier, versus in policing, sometimes you have to reach out to, a higher level person to get down to the lower level people, because lower level people can't make the same discretionary decisions. A good idea always is to have a clinician as a police liaison to serve as a contact person. So, that's the person that the officer can email or call or let know, so they have one person that they know to call in your organization. And then you can also ask the contact person for the police department. That's one of the main roles I serve as a mental health officer. It's the officer that you can call and you can get information from. You can talk to about your incident. You can figure out some more long-term planning. And remember to kind of address kind of needs in non-emergent situations to to troubleshoot, kind of it's good to have like bring everyone to the table, you know, in a regular basis, so you can kind of troubleshoot, you know, maybe what went wrong in an incident and kind of improve it and plans to improve it in the future. But it's usually not, you know, really productive to just address that single incident all the time. You know, a bunch of single incidents may go back, and then you're not really fixing the problem if you don't have these larger systems sort of. So, so here's kind of very specific to Madison. You know, this is kind of where I work in my role. So, so we have a lot of patrol officers. Is the main portion of our department. That's the stereotypical what police do on a daily basis: drive around in their cars, go to calls, you know, pull people over, you know, do what, you know, normal stuff. And they're all, you get CIT, which is crisis intervention training in the academy. All officers get it. So they are usually the frontline people who respond to main calls, especially mental health related. We also have mental health liaison officers, which I was one when I was a patrol officer. It's a volunteer position, and you get 2 days of training each year to kind of keep up on, you know, mental, the, you know, different changing aspects of the system. You know, usually we concentrate on, you know, some specific mental kind of illness thing. Then we have mental health officers, which I am one. It's a full-time position. It's my, you know, 40 hours a week. It's what I'm doing, collaborating with different people in the community, sometimes going on calls, working with the law enforcement crisis workers, who works with patrol and us, and, you know, is kind of in the police station, can respond to calls. It's more accessible than the people kind of sitting in the emergency service unit of our crisis group. And then, of course, there's a captain of this who oversees all the mental health officer, who's like our main supervisor there. So, what do mental health officers do? So, we plan and schedule, share information, you know, coordinate necessary follow-up, and so somebody's, you know, creating and having a lot of calls that patrol officers are having to deal with, but they don't have the time to address, you know, the underlying thing. We can reach out to their case manager, maybe work through a, you know, long-term solution. You know, we review all these reports that patrol officers route to us of mental health related calls they've gone on, so we kind of know how many calls for service these people are actually causing. Communicate, this is how to do follow-up, communicate with officers. So often, you know, kind of in the spirit of communication, you know, I'll find out what actually happened to this, you know, in this case, to this person that, you know, was this big case that took a lot of time from the patrol officers. And I think they really appreciate knowing what the actual disposition of the call was in the long term. And then we also do some home visits with providers or advocates or the other law enforcement crisis workers. Attend meetings, point of contact to family, healthcare providers. And then, of course, these are the crisis workers. So these are all social workers. We're supposed to have 3 of them. We only have 1 right now due to staffing, which is kind of unfortunate. And they're in the districts. They're the point of contact for like all the police officers there. They are an incredible resource. They can be a crisis field response, which is really great, and are able to kind of access our reports and see a lot of the police information that the normal crisis workers are not able to do. So there's a picture of us up at our Winnebago Mental Health Institute, which is one of the only state mental health hospitals in Wisconsin, and it's like 2 to 3 hours away from Madison. So that's where we have to take our involuntary commitments most of the time. It's an incredible time suck and resource intensive thing, and also not very good for the people who have to be taken out there, which is very unfortunate. Hoping to build one more closer to us at some point, but you know, it's a tough, long road. So we kind of discussed this, but you know, the legal threshold for civil commitments, which are what emergency detentions are versus criminal. So there's, you know, 2 sides of two sides of law. You know, there's civil, which is, you know, when you sue somebody. There's criminal, which is when you get arrested for battery or something like that. So whether you have probable cause to arrest somebody or beyond a reasonable doubt for conviction, for some emergency detention, they, you know, often will set and process increasing. So arrests often have a higher level of burden, but also you know, there's a lot more, you know, criminal laws and kind of Wisconsin actually has a very high level of burden for civil commitments, which is, you know, one of the frustrations a lot of officers get. It's kind of the example I use of somebody, you know, walking down the street, yelling, swearing, and causing a disturbance, but not doing anything dangerous, which would actually treat the underlying mental illness. So here's my information. So here's my phone number's down there, my email's there. Feel free to reach out to me whenever. Shameless plug here, but I'm here on a recruiting trip. As I said, there's a lot of people, we have a lot of officers who have a background in social worker that became police officers. I would say generally they often say that the pay and benefits is better being a police officer. You know, you have maybe kind of harder in some aspects, but you know, you're kind of compensated better. You have often better a better retirement and other such benefits. So they're really we're always willing to recruit social workers. I think social workers make great police officers, and so please reach out to me if you ever are interested in that. Wherever you go, I mean, I would love to advise you as somebody who came from a non-traditional police background.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions?
Madison WI. Where is that?
Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys offer like anything remote?
As far as
Any internships remote?
Internships.
Mm-hmm.
No, we do have an internship program. I don't think there's any remote ones really available. I could get you information about they are unpaid internships. Most people do them like in between junior, senior year of college. But
This is actually recruitment for hire.
yeah. So if you're ever, we have our academy is so one of the big things about police departments, which is great, is that you don't need to have any specific degree to get into, and then your training is paid for, and you're paid to do the training. So you're an employee, you have all the benefits as an employee. And for 6 months, you're just going to college again, and doing stuff, but you're getting paid to do it.
Is recruiting social workers? So I can help officer. What city are you from? Okay, so you're halfway there.
Yeah. And we have a few officers who came from Detroit. So.
Okay.
The internships are over the summer?
Yeah.
Do you guys have would you guys offer like residency?
I think so.
You probably get that by moving there.
Yeah.
I think you have to move there.
I mean, if you were gonna
Like do an internship
for
over the
internship,
summer?
so I mean, if you want to reach out,
Oh,
we can
Yeah.
see probably we might be able to find something that's cost effective. I don't think we have like funding to do it necessarily to pay for everything per se, but they certainly have worked. We have kind of a lot of programs now, especially for minority recruitment, of trying to get people to come and see and visit and go on a ride along and do stuff like that. So they're probably maybe you'll stay at another officer's house or something like that. So there's been a lot of push to kind of have that program. There's a program working. So if you're ever interested in that, we could certainly. I'll give you my card and we can certainly look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a line? Some of our social workers minor in criminal justice, that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I mean, my bachelor's degree was in emergency medicine, so
Mhm.
I mean, like, kind of, but not really anything to do with law enforcement. Certainly don't really have any criminal justice or law background for sure. So
Did you know what it was? To take 20 hours? No, it was somebody else. No.
did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, and I figured it out on my own too, like how social work. Because there are different types of officers, like a social, you're still an officer.
Yeah.
But like if the social work case comes in, it would be your departments, right?
Yeah. So I mean, social work case, I guess. What would you mean by
As
social
in
work case?
like,
A guy walking down the street yelling, screaming.
no, like,
You mean like children getting snatched in their home?
yeah, something like that.
Like what? Like a
Something, yeah, like a child getting abused.
okay. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that was to come to the department, it would be like your department.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it happened in the city of Madison, you as you're a police officer, you go and investigate it and see if there's any, criminal, thing that you could charge a person of child abuse or something like that. And then we, in our policies, we have to call CPS and let the social workers there know about it. And then they have to do kind of their own investigation of whether the child can stay with the family, sort of deal. So often they kind of have it's different kind of realms of, so they're working in child welfare, like long term, where the child's going to be placed. We are potentially, our main role is to find if there's a crime to punish the person for abusing the child. It's kind of the two things, but I think they rely a lot on our initial investigation to figure out what's going on. So it's a very, very big collaboration of information that goes on. Any other questions I can answer for you? Saw you at the career fair earlier, right?
Yeah, I just got back.
Did you get any lucky recruits yet while you were there?
I have not.
Okay.
I do have some stuff to give out though
Okay.
for you guys who showed up to class. So
Hey,
if you want some free pens or stickers,
yes, in person. That's
notepads, phone batteries. And then we have a internship one here. Yeah. There's some pens.
Does the career fair go on for like 1 or 2 more hours too?
4.
Till 4 p.m.?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's kind of like.
But if you guys already closed up shop, you're done.
No, my partner's over there actually.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, is that they got us stacked back to back. I actually double booked myself. We had a teaching presentation 2 doors down for somebody we're hiring. So I'm glad you emailed me, because I was like, Nikita, can you film our candidate for hire? She's like, I'll ask her, and I'm like, cool, because I double booked. Do you still send an email to the whole department, or just, I got it to Pergona, who's our chair?
I didn't send one to the whole part.
Right, which is fine, but.
I think I just sent it to you.
Right, which is fine. That's right. I don't have as many classes as I used to because I have the directorship. That's what cuts into it. So, but I'm glad. Yeah, I'm grateful you sent your email, because I was going to actually maybe she's hosting it in her class over there. And then we're just hiring a new social work candidate. Have you had any come since you have been here now 3 times, right?
Yes.
Is this the 4th?
Yeah, well, 4. We've been here 4 times, but once my partner came by himself and last fall. So.
Okay, in the fall. And has anybody from Central come up there?
Nope.
Not
No,
yet.
I don't think we had an application from one.
You could be the first ones.
Yeah. For sure.
Job time. Tuition reimbursement.
Yeah.
And that's at Madison University or
How does
whatever.
that even work? Like,
They pay your tuition, you get a job, and they cover your tuition, and you got enough money to pay your own housing.
Yep.
So maybe those are the questions. So the breakdown of the pay, You should be 18 or 20, you jump into the police academy, you go through the police academy. You can't have any past felonies or misdemeanors. What about a juvenile sealed record?
Jen, I mean, it depends what it is. I'm gonna
Right.
be honest. They do a background check. It's not a, incredibly,
BCI, FBI.
yeah,
background check. Right.
I mean, I've been through some background checks with other departments where you have to go through polygraph tests and stuff.
Right.
It's not like that.
Right.
Madison is a very, very progressive liberal city.
Right,
The
yeah.
department reflects that. So, I mean, even past drug use isn't
Right.
like a huge deal. There's a rule that you can't have used drugs in the last year,
Right.
but plenty of officers have used marijuana over there.
Well, you get it prescribed nowadays, but say, okay, so they could be hired because they're older than 18 or 20.
Yep.
And so you guys could be hired on, it's like $50,000 a year, they pay the rest of, what's the
So
starting?
basically, I can start making money now.
Yes.
And build my career now.
Yes,
Yep.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I know it takes away from our student base, but I don't want you guys to miss out on an opportunity just because we're selfish and want to keep you here to finish social work where you could get it paid for free by this gentleman's.
Are they gonna pay my bills at Central? I go to their school.
Hey, what did you say?
I pay the Central money, like, hey, when it's gonna pay for my
So
school, is it
yeah,
certain
I'll
school
tell you
that
what
pays
happened when I got my master's while I was working for the police department. So we usually hire people. I mean, it's not like necessary minimum requirement because we've certainly hired people who don't, but bachelor's degree is usually kind of like our minimum standard, or some life experience that is equivalent. So if you, so I got hired. I had a bachelor's degree. You go through the academy, so it's kind of education, like your education to be a police officer, but you're paid as an employee there. So you're paid 40 hours a week. I think at $30 an hour. So it's over $50,000 a year.
That's 70,000. 35?
Yeah, I think it's 30 an hour for the first 6 months while you're in the academy, and then it bumps up.
And they're both sophomores, so y'all would have an associate's degree, right? Are you? So you would have 60 hours, which is an associate's technically. And then,
And
I got your form you need to fill out. All right, continue on, sorry.
And then so I decided, a year in that I was going to go get my master's degree. So then I started a master's program. I was doing it part-time, and then I could apply for tuition reimbursement. And you get paid, I have to pay the tuition, but then it gets reimbursed after. And then you can also, and then if you finish, after 3.5 years, if you have a bachelor's degree, you get an 18% raise after 3.5 years of the department.
18%.
And 22% if you have a master's degree.
So yes, they hire before you get.
Yeah.
You said the minimum requirement is a bachelor's. We're the closest HBCU to Madison also. And gosh, what else? What other questions do you have about hiring? Is it only once a year?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay,
We
so
run
June,
one.
you can jump into the
We might be
academy.
doing 2 academies. Right now, we only do 1 academy a year. You
Starts
start in
in June.
June, you end in February, you end in, I don't know, October or something, and then you go through field training, which is 3 months.
And you're paid for that.
You're paid. This is all paid. I mean, you're always paid as an employee for that.
You know, actual.
February.
Yeah, February, you're on your own. They kick you out. Yeah, you're driving
You gotta
by
fly.
yourself, making your own decisions, all just like a regular officer.
And have options for
You don't
tuition
even
reimbursement.
get like, what do they call that?
A partner.
You don't shadow somebody and then you start?
Field training, yeah. So you have the 6 months of the academy, then 3 months of field training.
Oh, then they do like this.
Yes.
That's
So, right here, I'm 20.
So it's a
right here.
9-month kind of educational track.
So, are they springing year?
Okay, nice. Presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are you both sophomores then?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I was saying it can sound scary, but also sounds like a sweet deal if you have the opportunity to have school covered or paid for.
Yeah.
Or,
And if you were to come with like associate's degree, you you get primary for tuition reimbursement to attain your bachelor's degree. So you'll almost always pay for it. There's certainly always pay for that.
Yeah, you're going.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, did you guys have any other questions? Does that sound scary enough to you, or you like,
It sounds like a good opportunity.
I know?
It really is. I mean, like, there's not many jobs left in the world that are like such good, ways out of like poverty to the middle class. Like there used to be a lot of, steel mill type jobs that were kind of
Right,
like that,
yeah.
really good like union, well-paid jobs. And frankly, public safety is probably one of the last jobs. So you have police, firemen, stuff like that. And we have a lot of officers who have really improved their families, trajectory in this world and for generations by becoming police officers.
Well, there's a pension too, right?
Yeah.
That's what's
How
almost.
does pay work as a police officer? Like, you get paid every week, you get paid every stuff.
Every month?
It's a bi-weekly paycheck, so twice a month, so every 2 weeks. You get so you have your base rate. I think like mine's like $85,000 a year now, with all of my educational incentive and everything. And then if you work more than 8 hours in a day, you get paid overtime. So you get paid a time and a half your hourly rate. So like this year, I made over $100,000 without working a ton of overtime. So you can very easily make a lot more than your base rate is.
So at least 2,000 every 2 weeks. That's what you start at. It sounds like the start is 2,000. 4,000 a month, 52,000 a year. This is the start more than, I guess, if it's 30, that's 60. If it's 35, it's 70,000 a year.
Yeah.
So pray about it. That's how I always leave the students. Pray about it and contact him. Because you finish in May. The deadline though to apply for
It's in October.
is October. So they would be way late for this June.
Yeah.
Okay. But if they have applied in October, you could do it next June. And if you overloaded your courses and whatnot, you could finish before next June. If you wanted to. So, cool. Yeah, I'm just trying to find any other ways I can emphasize it. Pensions, is yours the same as ours? And
So
STRS, we have to put in 14% every paycheck.
I feel like it's something like that.
Okay.
What are we putting in? So WRS, so 249, whatever, and then employer puts in 4, so probably double, right?
That is impressive. They
Yeah.
put in double. Yeah.
And Wisconsin has a state retirement plan, so all police officers are under the state retirement plan, and it's based on a percentage of your best 3 years. So
Yes.
So when you work, if you work a lot of overtime for 3 years, you'll have a really good pension. And you max it out at 23 years and 52 years of age.
So you could retire
at 52, which is very young to retire.
Yes. So you're working.
You could literally have half your life and
I
just
have a question, this is kind of in general, but it's not on topic. How does retirement go? Am I getting a big
Rest
check
of your
every
life.
month?
Rest of your life.
How much am I getting paid? Is it the average what I was getting paid before? Is it the same amount?
2/3 of your highest 3 paychecks, maybe? Or you
I don't know if it's that much, but yeah, it's some percentage of whatever your highest 3 years were. Also based off how many years you were working and what age you are when you retire.
So, how many years should a person work?
Most people would say if you did Social Security income, you can't get it until you're 62 to 65. You get a lower amount, maybe $1,000 a month. But if you went at 69, 70, you would get maybe $2,000 a month. Now with pensions, it sounds like it would be more like, I feel like for us it is 2% for every year you work. So if I did 25 years, it's half my highest 3 years. If I do 35 years, it could be 2/3 of my highest 3 years, which would say maybe you do 100,000, you still get 66,000 a year until you die.
How long have you been working?
In teaching, because I have at least 12 years in Social Security. Mainly because I started at 14, but then I had like 10 in teaching.
Oh.
So I'm 45 now, so since I was 14, which is almost like 30 years.
What about you?
So I've been with the department for just over 5 years.
Oh.
So I have a little ways to go before I would really hit.
Only 18 more though, right?
Yeah, so
That's
that,
what I only have 19 more. I mean, in the years of work, if I've already put in 31 years, it's only 19 left. So,
I mean, 52 is a very young age to retire,
Right,
honestly.
right.
I mean, you can have a whole nother career afterwards.
Right. Are you 30?
32.
Okay, so you would meet them both at 20 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm
Sweet.
kind of,
And then you can double dip. That's the even more fun part. You just go take another position and collect retirement.
so you work. Yeah, you can work part time.
You can't work.
Probably not in
Stop
the same
working at that
department, right?
Okay.
But they
Yeah.
might not let you double dip anymore, but you could go work at Walmart.
It depends where you.
Oh.
Yeah, it depends where you work, but
Yeah.
you know that I don't think in Wisconsin one you have offset unless you go back and work for like the city or
Oh.
some other public service. But if you were to go work, in some private entity, as a social worker, you would
True,
matter.
true, yeah. So you could double dip for sure. Sounds weird thinking about retirement at a young age, but yes. I appreciate you coming and reminding me because my brain is like mush with 3 kids under 2.5 years
Oh, yeah.
of age.
Oh my God, I can
Killing
imagine.
it.
Oh.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, yeah. Thank you guys, because I thought you wanted the overload request form.
That's what, like classes and stuff?
Yeah, if you guys take more than 18